This time we're going to be talking about the next book in the Lost Omens line, Gods and Magic. This wonderful book here. I'm Luis Loza. I'm one of the developers from this book, and I have with me
Eleanor Ferron, or possibly a green Skittermander, whichever the audience prefers.
Yes, Skittermander helped us out a lot with development too.
Press 1 for me, press 2 for the Skittermander.
So we're here to kind of give the rundown on what Gods and Magic is, what's featured in the book, and what everyone can kind of expect with this new book, as well as to show off a little bit of the amazing artwork that's featured inside. So I think without further ado, we can just kind of hop into it. We have a nice set of images here, starting with the cover that we just showed off here.
I'm being voted off the stream.
Oh, no. Skittermander, please take over.
Skittermander, take the wheel.
So here we have this amazing cover where it's an amazing triptych that features 3 different deities, Caden Kalian, Iomade, and Norgorber, all deities who have ascended thanks to the power of what you see above there, the Star Stone, which is something that we haven't ever depicted before.
This is the first depiction ever of the Starstone. In fact, when coming up with the idea of this cover, it was sort of hampered a bit by us saying, well, what does the Starstone look like?
Yeah,
nobody knew. And in fact, I thought that it would be like a palm-sized rock, and a lot of people thought that it would like be a meteor-sized. Mm-hmm. So we didn't even have that down.
Yeah, but
what did you think it looked like?
I imagined a huge rock that fell out of space because, you know, the whole Earthfall thing.
What with it being a huge rock that fell out of space?
Yeah, but that's the core that was inside is the Starstone. So that's what survived, or at least that's what we know that survived. And it happened to get a whole cathedral built around it and a whole island that raised under it thanks to Eridan's help. And that's what we're seeing here is the image of all the would-be gods that failed to reach the Starstone and failed to pass its test. So we thought it was a great image for the cover. We're talking about gods, and what better centerpiece than the one amazing artifact in Galarian that can make you into a god and those who have already reached that power.
Except for Razmir.
Yes, Razmir unfortunately didn't pay his fees to make it onto the cover.
It's not part of the God Union.
So this book is going to feature our core 20 deities. And if we hop over to our next image, we get a quick little preview of some of the deities you can expect. Here we have some of the classics like Lamashtu there on the right, or Desna in the far corner there up by the moon. But we also have some of the lesser-known deities like Tsukio, who is a Tien deity. And this is just kind of a cool image we get to show off. What do gods do? What might they look like in mythology and representations?
Plus, in putting the newer gods into this book, the other 20, as it were, we have to consider how they might interact with the core 20 deities. And in this particular case, it's pretty clear who's on whose side, but Tsukio, being a lawful good god of madness and neurodivergence, we decided obviously wouldn't like Lamashtu terribly much.
Yeah, and being a deity of the moon would probably team up with a deity of the stars like Desna to take a fight to Lamashtu.
Yeah, to fight in the name of the moon.
Yeah. So, as we mentioned, we have core deities like Desna and Lamashtu and what we refer to as other deities. So the first part of the book features the 20 deities that are featured in the core rulebook, the ones that are, you get the basics like what their names are, like, you know, Abadar, Sarenrae, things like that, their domains, and just some basic information on that. But we haven't gotten a chance to really explain who they are. And this is the first book, at least for second edition, where we get to take a dive into those. Anyone who's familiar with first edition books like Gods and Magic or Inner Sea Gods might know a lot about these deities already, but there are a lot of new players who are joining in for, you know, with the start of second edition. And also there's been changes that have come and gone in terms of the history of deities or what they're doing now, or just a chance for us to talk about different aspects of them that we haven't had a chance to talk about before. And that's why we get to feature them here. So we have some of the deities you're used to. If we go to the next page, someone like Urgathoa, who's still here, still raising undead.
Obligatory fan disservice.
And this book features all the basics that you need to worship a deity, in addition with the rules in the core rulebook. So the core rulebook has things like your domains, your anathemas, edicts, things like that. So we don't go over those, but we then get to go into some of the other basics about their flavor in Galarian. So like, who are Urgathoa's allies? Who are her enemies? Who are her common worshippers? What are her temples like? Things like that we get to discuss a bit here.
Disgustingly awesome.
It's great. We love her.
If it kind of bony around the hips, but she does have a certain attractive personality to her.
I like her hair. I think it's nice.
Yeah, I like her alluring looks.
And she's got a really cool scythe.
Conveniently placed. A really cool scythe.
In addition to some of the basic information about who the deities are and their worship and faith like that, we also include new rules that immediately start playing with some of the new mechanics in second edition. We get to introduce a new background in this book that ties into literally every deity that featured in the book here. This background is called Raised by Belief, and basically if you're used to picking your backgrounds, it would give you two different ability scores, something like, choose either strength or wisdom, and then one free boost. And that does similarly here, but instead of deciding right out the gate, hey, these are your two ability scores that you work with, each deity has a specific array of ability scores that you can choose from when taking or ability boosts.
For example,
if we're talking about Urgathoa, hers grants you the option between either Constitution or Wisdom. And someone like Iomade might give you Strength or Constitution instead. And then based on each of those deities, you can decide, maybe I prefer the background where I was more of a faithful person earlier on and take the benefits that comes with that background. In addition to that, though, we also have a new system of a new mechanic here we call divine intercessions. This is a thing that's come up a lot in our adventure paths, things like that, where you might find something like a desecrated altar to, let's say, Sarenrae, and then your PCs could go and clean it up, consecrate it, and in doing so earn Sarenrae's blessing, which might give you something like a bonus bit of fire damage for your attacks for a whole day or something like that. And we always thought that was a cool mechanic that we wanted to kind of expand upon. So we've created what are called divine intercessions, which provide these bonuses in a way that a GM can hand them out as they feel fit, and also are themed to each of the different deities.
We noted that so in Pathfinder First Edition, the gods sort of had an off or on switch relationship with their followers. You were either in the full favor of your deity, or you lost all your spells and divine class abilities, or you weren't from a divine class and your deity didn't actually even matter, technically in the game. Obviously, players would usually lean into their chosen deity, especially if it's Caden Kalian or that sort of thing. But it didn't really do anything. So the divine intercessions are sort of a tool to put the influence of the god into the world without it taking away player agency. Obviously, Caden Kalian isn't going to come down and do your adventure for you, I hope. Maybe if you had a game where you played the gods.
It could be, yeah.
Maybe. That could be interesting. You're all avatars or something. But suppose you, get super drunk, do some things you shouldn't. That's an anathema for Caden Kalian. But should you really be kicked out of his entire church because you had like a bad bender or something? Probably not. But at the same time, he's probably gonna, lean down and say, hey, you need to chill. Mm-hmm. And he might drop a very tiny curse on you.
Yeah, I might drop a tiny curse, which this one says that you have the displeasure, as if you had a hard night of drinking and find that anything you drink tastes foul. And basically, Caden would say, hey, learn your lesson, and then kind of take that away.
Yeah, you need to cool it with alcohol, so I'm not going to let you have any fun with it.
Or if you earn Caden's favor, he might provide you one of these minor boons, which in particular Caden's is you don't get hungover the next morning. Hey, go have fun. You've earned it.
Just go drink that entire keg.
Yeah, and every one of these core deities, the core 20 that we have here, has a set of boons and curses that they can provide that serve both as an example that a GM can immediately just pop into the game when they feel is appropriate. Hey, this is something that my PCs did and I want to reward them, and they all happen to be followers of, let's say, Iomade. They might earn their moderate boon, which hers says that it restores all lost hit points and replenishes your spells and focus points and other daily resources. Basically, go and keep fighting because you've done good and you need to keep fighting that good fight. Or you can vary if they're minor, moderate, or major in power or in their debilitation that they provide, the drawbacks that they provide. So we have all of these examples for all the core 20 deities, and then hopefully you can use those as a GM as a springboard to kind of come up with your own boons and curses in the future.
Yeah, and these are just examples. Obviously, you can, as the GM, fine-tune that. If you're begging Shaylin for your life because you're about to be murdered by a bunch of artistic spray painting hobos, she probably isn't going to give you her normal boon, which is
a bonus to diplomacy.
Yeah, well, you could do a bonus to diplomacy to tell them to go away, I guess. But you might get something a little more tuned to the situation, like if you fell into a vat of paint and didn't put any ranks in swim. And also these are not meant to be just necessarily thrown around all willy-nilly, because otherwise everyone in Galarian would be cursed by Rovagug all the time, and that would suck. But I've been playing games like even in our Kingmaker game, they had like a side quest where this lawyer pissed off Pharasma and got cursed and was trying to uncurse it. So these sorts of things can come to play in any sorts of games and make stories out of it. Or I've been watching the game Hades recently, where you're like running through and getting like the help of all these different gods to try and get out of hell because it sucks there.
Yeah, it's not nice.
but like something like that can really augment a campaign to make it feel like the gods are more of a living, breathing part of the world instead of a mechanic that grants you spells in the morning.
Yeah. And another way we wanted to show the gods' influence in the world is just show how they might be depicted throughout Galarian. So if we go on to the next image here, we have Urgathoa, and we've shown her artwork plenty of times, but this is, we imagined what might depictions of Urgathoa look like in the setting, in Galarian. What might people do? Would they do paintings? Would they sing songs, or things like that? And for Urgathoa, we thought maybe they carve things out of bone and have something like this ridiculously cool bone carving here.
Yeah, this is an extremely intricate Urgathoa carving. Somebody spent a lot of time on that.
Yeah, but it's not just always like carvings and things like that. But we'd also want to show how it might vary from region to region. Something like the bone carving might be something that shows up in I don't know, like in the Eye of Dread region, something like that. But something like the next image would show up in maybe the Golden Road, maybe specifically in Assyrian, which is a depiction of Methis here. So
yeah, that one's super amazing.
Yeah,
we asked for the because he was the god king of Assyrian for a while, and so we asked for a hieroglyphic depiction of the two sides of Methis, the creator and the destroyer. I especially love the artist who made the magic from the destroyer look like the devouring snake Apep. So that we didn't ask for that necessarily. That was just something the artist came up with, and it was pretty amazing.
So each of the core 20 deities has one of these depictions. Some of them are more common, typical stuff you'd expect. So like Shellin has an image that is kind of stained glass looking, while Sarenrae actually has something that looks like it might be more Arcadian in theme. But once we get past these core 20 deities, though, then we go into what we call the other 20, which is just another 20 deities that we felt would be important, we thought were cool, that we actually featured in first edition in other books like Inner Sea Face and Face of Galarian. And those include the likes of some of our not quite niche, super obscure deities, but ones that haven't had the limelight like the Core 20 have. So if we go on to the next image, we might see the likes of maybe Rommel Dazzle, who is the goddess of the gnomes. And these don't get the full write-up like the Core 20 deities get, but they do feature all of the basics you need for the worship of them and use in play. So you get your alignment, you get your domains, your edicts, anathemas, and it still ties into that background that we mentioned that gives you your ability boost. Your divine ability, as we call it, is featured for all of these Core 20 deities.
I see you all asking about who is in this book, and we're going to save that for the end of the show because I know that's going to be the majority of the questions we get.
Yeah.
So hold that thought.
Absolutely. In addition to these, because the way the core rules have, important spells, we wanted to supplement something like the avatar spell. So these other 20 deities each have their own specific avatar entry for when you need to call upon that power at 20th, 19th, 20th level, you can do so and be a worshiper of these 20 deities and still get that power. We don't do that for every single deity that shows up in the book, just the core 20 and the other 20 have those so far, but we hope that that's a great way for GMs to come up with their own avatars for other stuff in their games.
I will say Kazuto, which is the next image, has my favorite avatar ranged attack.
Oh, yes.
Which is to throw a live jaguar in somebody's face,
yes,
have it maul that person, and then it runs back and gets back on her shoulders.
Absolutely. As a ranged strike, she can do jaguar pounce, or a worshiper could do jaguar pounce, which has got a range of 60 feet. And technically, it's a strike, so you could do that 3 times around and
fling 3 jaguars into somebody's face.
So after we go into these other 20 deities, then we start talking about some of the other demigods and pantheons that exist. We talk about the likes of Imperial Lords and the Archdevils and Demon Lords and the Outer Gods and stuff like that. So we actually got to depict a lot of these demigods for the first time, or ones that maybe had only 1 or 2 depictions beforehand. So we've set up a couple of pictures to hopefully see if we can play a little Who's That Demigod?
Anybody know who this is?
So this is a big snake dragon looking thing with a lion's head, and there's lots of lightning and dark clouds. So if anyone knows who that is, you should probably throw it into the chat here, and we'll see if anyone gets that one right.
Or just be like in school where you just stared at us until we give you the answer. Oh, yeah, King Trey III. It is Ranganori.
Yes. So, all right, let's move on to the next one. These next 2 are Imperial Lord. So if anyone knows who this Imperial Lord is, it looks like a person with a lioness head and some scrolls in hand. Looks like a cool person. So I wonder if anyone can recognize who this Imperial Lord might be.
Everybody go running for an actual catfolk deity? They could worship her, but...
Yeah, it's not inherently a cat deity, but it's one of our... Well, looks like no one is recognizing it. So we're going to say that this is Eritris, the heart speaker. She's one of the...
Imperial
Lords, which are one of the kind of large pantheon of good demigods. A lot of them are worshipped in particular in Varissia and even more specifically in Magnamar. And she's the Imperial Lord of honest debate, opinions, and truth. So it's all about facts and information is important to her. So among the Imperial Lords, she's one of the featured here. And we have a different Imperial Lord here. She is, maybe if we give them a little bit of a hint, she's known as the Shimmering Maiden and represents things like constellations and the Northern Lights. Maybe people will recognize who this might be. Again, these are new depictions, so if you don't know who they are, we're not surprised because we've never seen them before. Pelura, yes. Aha. Sayoni got that. Yeah, Pelura is, as I mentioned, an Imperial Lord of constellations and hope sickness and northern lights. So she kind of represents the constellations that guide people home and things like that. And moving on to our last deity, this is one of the...
If you've read the entry, you're probably going to know who this is, but...
This is technically a psychopomp usher who are...
She is a little obscure.
Yeah, so the psychopomp
and,
ushers
gooey.
help out with making sure that the souls in the afterlife get to where they need to and no one disrupts the river of souls. So the afterlife can continue as it needs to. I don't know if anyone will know this. This is a pretty obscure, really late in first edition.
We did just say Psychopomp Usher, King Trey III.
Yeah, we have a whole section about the different monster demigods.
If you want to go running for your money was on Demon Lord, no.
I can understand.
Just because she's minorly blobby doesn't mean she's evil.
So this is actually Mother Vulture. She is one of the Psychopomp ushers. She's all about where is it? She judges those.
Sort of the goddess of recycling.
Yeah,
but not in a pleasant way. You know, somebody has to clean up all those dead bodies.
Yeah, and
she eats them. And then turns them into more useful things.
So, as we mentioned, we get to talk a lot about the different demigod pantheons and things like that. So we feature the eldest, and we feature the archdevils. We feature the monitor demigods, which include the psychopomp ushers and the different protean demigods and the elemental lords. There's a lot that we talk about here. The horsemen. So it just... We try to cram as much as we can into this book, and unfortunately, it means that some of these aren't as fully represented as they could be. There are too many Imperial Lords to fit in the I think 8 pages that we gave them.
We have so many Imperial Lords and many, many more demons and devils.
Yeah, so we try to touch on those that we feel are most important or had the most influence in Galarian or previous adventures and campaign setting books, things like that.
We like to think that we give enough of a description for players to pick it up and play somebody who worships these, but they aren't going to be as thorough as the core 20 and other 20.
Yeah, but they do get all of their information featured in a nice little handy chart at the end that has all the domains, edicts, anathemas, all the basics you need to worship anyone that's mentioned in this book. And from there, we also feature a small slew of pantheons. There's been lots of pantheons that have existed in Pathfinder's history before, like the Dwarven Pantheon and the Elven Pantheons. We've never talked about how to worship them, and this is the first time we get to provide you rules on, well, if I want to be a Hell Knight who's in the Order of the Godclaw, how do I worship the Godclaw? And those rules are here for you, and hopefully serve as a great way for us to expand on them in the future, or for GMs to expand on them in their home games. Yeah. So moving on to the next picture, we don't talk just about gods here, though. What are we looking at here?
Does anybody know? Class? Bueller?
So what we're looking here is a few of the different totems that may be used by the Shuanti people, who there's a tradition among the Shuanti where they kind of follow the guidance of different totems. Those totems might represent concepts like the wind or the moon, or it might represent specific animals like horses and things like that. And that is one of the many philosophies that we feature in here. These philosophies include things like God calling among the summoners of Sarkoris, or the Sarkoris Scar now, or the green faith and things like that. And we get to talk about a little bit about these different philosophies and how they work, and how you can actually be a follower of the philosophies as well. So these philosophies feature their own edicts and anathemas as well, just as if they were a deity that you could worship. So we get to go beyond just what are the straight up deities that affect the worlds here. It's what do the laws of mortality look like, and how do people follow that? And much like following a fave, it has everything that
everything except spells.
Everything except spells.
You don't get to be. This isn't Planescape. You don't get to be so atheistic you get magic powers.
Yep. So, moving on after that, we then get to the last section of the book. It's a section called Character Options, which features a lot of new mechanics and new options for characters here. What we're seeing here is one of the new spells featured in here. It's a book that's both got gods and magic, so of course we got to add new spells here. This spell specifically is the Whirling Scarves spell. And basically that protects you from attacks coming at your way because you have too many scarves in the way of these attacks. And
you are too fabulous to die.
So we feature, looks like 6 different pages of spells, and these spells are available to anyone whose tradition it features. So it can be arcane spells and occult spells and primal spells as well. They're not all just divine spells. In addition to that, we have different feats as well. So if you are a worshiper or a follower of a particular fate, you can take these feats, and a lot of them don't really have hey, you have to be divine or have divine influence like a champion or a cleric to take these feats. They're kind of available to everyone. We wanted to make sure these options are free for anyone who wants to play a character that follows a particular faith. In addition to that, we also have, let me see what it says. It says 18 new domains to supplement all the different deities that are in this book. The core rule book is great. We love it. But there's just so much we can fit in that before it explodes. So we had to make sure that, we got as many of the domains as we could in that book, but what we couldn't get in, we expanded upon here. And there's a lot of new domains, like some of the stuff that you would expect, something like the lightning domain or the void domain, stuff that might have had representation in first edition, but also things that let us kind of fill out and flesh out a lot of the concepts that some of these deities had that the core 20 deities didn't have. Something like the time domain or the glyph domain. So all of those come with their own focus spells that are available to whoever happens to worship them. So
we have the cold domain, not the winter domain,
yeah.
Rexeliquid.
Yeah, it's the cold domain, which has things like the winter bolt focus spell that lets you shoot an icicle at people. And if we look at the next picture here, the last picture we have is about the Wormkin domain, which was originally something that you might have known as the Scaly Kind domain. This is all about dragons and their kin, and you're looking at the Draconic Barrage focus spell here, which lets you summon small versions really tiny small versions of dragons to kind of fly around you and shoot off things like bolts of electricity or gouts of fire at your enemies.
Summon tiny cute wormling missiles.
tiny cute dragons. And after we get through all these core these new spells and domains and the like, we still got more to work with. A lot of these deities, like we said, we didn't have the rules to properly supplement their particular themes. So someone like Cassandali, who's in this book, who features, their themes are more about technology and things like that. We don't have a real high-tech weapon for her in the core rulebook, so we got to come up with a new one, what we call the Poly Tool, which is kind of like a Swiss Army knife.
Swiss Army dagger.
Swiss Army dagger. Yeah, and so this book features a lot of new weapons that are probably the favored weapon of some deity in this book. So the Poly Tool is a cool new weapon that lets you swap between the bludgeoning or the piercing or the slashing mode as you need, because it's cool high-tech stuff. And in addition to that, we then get to feature a lot of cool magic items. So we have something like the Bottomless Stein, which is
I think you can guess.
Perfect for followers of Caden Kaylee. So as long as you leave it right side up, it'll refill, things like that. Or we have the likes of the Lucky Rabbit's Foot, which for followers of Desna lets you kind of travel and get away from your enemies. So that lets you re-roll reflex saves when you fail, and then also move away from whatever the effect was that caused that. So we have different magic items that are tied to each of these deities, and most of these items are uncommon in nature, which means you can't really get them by default. But if you happen to be a worshiper of the deity that this item is tied to, like Torag's Silver Anvil has an access line that says if you're a follower of Torag, you can get this. This is now common for you.
And then we have 10 pages of an appendix.
Oh boy. I'm going to show this on screen for just half a second. This is
the 10-page appendix to cover all the gods we couldn't fit in the rest of the book.
Yeah, they are
and
too
we
many
could not
deities.
fit all of the gods into the appendix either.
I think someone mentioned once that we have over 400 deities so far that we've talked about in Pathfinder's history.
We don't have that in this book.
We have over 100 in the appendix, and that was still just scratching the surface.
We still had to cut some.
Yeah, but we tried to get in as many as we could that we knew were very popular or people were asking for, and they may not have had any listing at all in the book, but we still feature them. So something like the Tian deities, they don't really show up in the book beyond the likes of like Tsukio, but we still give them a site. I think we get pretty much all of them in there that we could.
Well, definitely a lot.
Yeah.
And all the stats that you need to worship this deity are in there. The alignment of the deity, the accepted follower alignments, titles, domains, cleric spells, favored weapon, the divine ability, skill, and font, so you can use the background as well as various stuff, and the edicts and anathema.
Yeah, so they're all in here. So you have all the basics you need to worship them, and if you know where to look, or you can always ask. A lot of the information for these deities still exists in previous Pathfinder books. They're just not brought forward to 2E just yet. We have the likes of Inner Sea Gods, we have the likes of Face Galarian, Inner Sea Face. So you can always go back and get the information on them there. So I think that covers pretty much everything that's in the book.
Unless you want to show off the index.
Oh boy. Wow, Open Gaming License version 1.0A. Amazing. No, I think that's all you can really expect. We're not obviously going to read cover to cover because we don't have 8 hours to read this whole book to everyone.
And also buy it.
Yeah, but
buy our book.
But if anyone has any questions, I'm pretty sure lots of people have had questions here. We can try to answer these here. And I know earlier someone asked about the avatar spell, which I made sure to point out that, hey, yes, you get more entries for the avatar spell here. So let's see what we have here.
Caffold's Byler.
Caffold's Byler, sure. Will there be rules for creating your own pantheon? I want to make a cleric of Shelyn and Dubras as a pantheon. We don't specifically say this is what it takes to make a pantheon, but we provide 3 examples for the pantheon, which I think should be a great starting point for a lot of GMs to say, oh, well, they did this in the pantheon. Here's what I need to do for my particular pantheon. So any GM should be able to kind of work from the examples that we have and go from there.
River Ray, what's Cassandali's role without androids or much high tech in the setting at all? Cassandali is the goddess of artificial life, so maybe you don't have your high tech androids in this setting, but that would still probably cover anything that is constructed and intelligent. What that counts as would probably be up to you, since you are deciding what's going to be in that setting aside from androids. If you had an intelligent golem or something, certainly that could look to Cassandali for some guidance.
Yeah, we have plenty of constructs in our setting that are intelligent, so it wouldn't just be androids. I mean, there is a huge focus on androids, and we don't have rules for an ancestry for that at the moment, but that doesn't mean that Cassandra doesn't have influence, especially in places like Numeria where she would be commonly featured. Okay, we have a nice set of questions here. Zerg Titan, 99. Who are the additional 20? Do we want to say all 20 of them?
Come on, buy the book.
Here, I'll say, you say one and I'll say one. So which one do you want people to know is in the book?
Achaeachic.
Okay, yeah. The mantis god, the red mantis. I will say... Oh, I, of course, am going to say that Kyrgyz is in this book because he is awesome. I love Kyrgyz quite a bit. So yeah, he's one of the core, or the other 20 alongside.
Just look at them muscles.
Oh boy, what a hunk. All right, so Norin Ellendale says, any new Mystic Theurge type feats and stuff? Let me double check these feats. I don't recall that there's any feats that let you kind of tap into other magic, because a lot of what we wanted to do is let these feats work for anyone, regardless of whether or not you have any magic. I mean, there's things like the Battle Prayer feat, which you don't have to have magic, but it lets you kind of call forth the divine power of your deity to harm your enemies. All you really need to do is be a master in religion and worship a deity, but no, there's nothing like a Mystic Theurge that lets you kind of mix magic together. Xmas Baker says, what's your favorite new domain? Ooh, this is tough. As we said, there's 18 domains.
All your babies.
Go. I think I'm going to say time, if only to just keep up with my brand of loving time-related stuff. The time domain lets you kind of hold off, like basically pause any debilitating effects that are on you, and then later put people into stasis. So that's always pretty cool.
Favorite domain. I don't know if it's my favorite, but we have the change domain, which I definitely think was the most useful when it came to getting some interesting, weird concepts into certain gods that weren't covered by the core 20 domains.
Statler 97 asks, is there a Leshy god? There probably is. There's not one in this book.
You mean Gazra, right?
Gazra would probably be a good one. The Green Faith would probably be a good one for, for Leshies to worship. In terms of a straight up, this is the god of Leshies, I don't think we have one just yet. That is a great seed to plant in the future. For us to grow. Yeah. Lori 7x3. Do you know if we get a similar book for Starfinder? I don't know if we have any plans for that, but we are
not the right department to be bothering for that. But
if you want that kind of book, let the Starfinder team know, and the more you bug them about it, the more likely a book like this would be. I would love to see a book like this. Someone like Triune getting more details would be amazing. It'd be great. Lori also asked, is there a dead god section?
We didn't have enough room for the living gods.
No, that's true.
Erden gets the boot. He's dead. Who cares about him?
We don't really discuss them too much here. King Trey III is asking for the edicts and anathema for HKEC.
Give him like one.
One edict or one anathema? Which one?
I don't know. Flip a coin.
We'll just...
Flip a Skittermander.
One of the edicts is wield sawtooth sabers in combat, so make sure you're doing that, and the Mantis God will look upon you favorably. Flunk Gus asks, how does Urgathoa feel about the Whispering Giant trying to become a god? I don't think we go into it in this book, but I'm sure she's for it. I mean, right?
I mean, she seems to like him if the rumors are true. But
rumors are that she's hidden his...
Yeah, but like rumors are rumors.
I mean, more undead is probably good in Urgathoa's eyes, so probably favorably looking upon that.
I think somebody said he can make a great herald. That
would be fun. Yeah. Interesting. All right. This is Prince Sethariel asking anything for the Brown Prince, aka the Oino Daemon. I know we talk about the Horseman. I don't think we mentioned much about the Oino Daemon.
I think we might mention he exists.
We might mention he exists. Let's quickly look at this chart.
No, he is not in with the Horseman.
Nope, not in the chart either. Mysterious. He's been missing for quite a while, so maybe that mystery will remain a mystery for the moment. But they also ask, anything cool to share for Nocticula? Yeah, Nocticula's in this book. I think we teased that already once before in other streams. You get all the basics here and all the avatar information you need. So
She's got a really swell picture.
Yeah, and she's great. Actually, one of my favorite pictures among this book here.
Should we take Mercy and show them?
No.
Buy our book.
No, you'll get to see her very soon. River Ray asks, what was the toughest part of developing this book?
The chart.
Oof.
The chart. The appendix at the back of the book, which contains over 100 gods, means that we have to, or at least one of us had to, come up with edicts and anathema for all
Hundreds
of them.
of deities.
All of them. Even ones that came with like one paragraph in a source book we did like 5 years ago, and we had to sort of come up with them because they weren't very well developed, and we had to stick with them going forward, knowing that responsibility lies upon us. Anyway, that was hard.
Yeah, I think another hard thing was just the initial deciding who gets to go in the book and who doesn't was, I don't know, we had a few meetings on that. We got everyone's input in the office, all the other developers and like that. Give us your top 10 deities, and we kind of whittled it down from there, and then after that decided, okay, well, who else should we represent still? Things like that. So there's a lot of work in deciding this. We knew that it wasn't possible to fit every single deity, so it just, don't have us do this again right away, please. King Trey asks, just wondering if included in the book are Hastur, Zamindor, and Ragathiel. I know Ragathiel is. Let me look in.
I think those other two are too.
I also think so, but I don't want to lie to people. Yes, they are both featured in the book. So you'll get all the information you need, including the anathemas of who cares for the outer gods and the great old ones. I'm being serious. I'm not making a joke. They don't have anathemas. They don't care what you do. So
seriously, you're worshiping people who the entire point of their horror is that they don't care.
Yeah,
you are meaningless. You are a meaningless pawn.
You might be able to further their goals, but if you don't, whatever. They're indifferent. King Trey, we just add create a burst. Anything for followers of neutral deities, since they don't have access to the best divine attack cantrip. Ooh, well, we have neutral deities for people to worship, and I think that's probably something you more likely see in APG than you would in this book. This book has no new cantrips from what I recall. It's all first level spells on up. Sorry.
Does Abadar offer insurance policies in any of our settings? I assume in Starfinder.
Yes, probably. I would not be surprised if there are insurance policies. But they have very specific clauses and riders. Like, oh, did you get blown up by a fireball? You didn't have a fireball protection, so I'm sorry.
I guess it depends on the alignment of your insurance salesman. Oh, Xmas Baker has a great question. Any particular interesting or wacky anathemas?
Well, I think the outer gods having an anathema of none was pretty good.
I remember that Ing, the what are they? The one of the eldest. Has an anathema of wearing seasonal clothing out of seasonal celebration clothing outside of the seasons. So if you keep your Halloween decorations up past October 31st, you will be cursed.
Killing Jay asks, who would you say is the most obscure deity that made into the book? I would say probably some of the new deities that you don't even know are here. For example, we feature just a tiny taste of the gods of Sarkoris here in the chart, which are not something that you've ever seen before. So that's pretty obscure because you've never seen them.
We do know the names because we came and put them in the book.
Yeah, we know the names, but they're not anything that you could worship in first edition for that. So just that's one of the things. Look through the chart. You'll find a lot of really interesting stuff, I think. Statler97 is asking, are there new focus spells? Yes, there are at least 36 new focus spells because each of the 18 domains gets 2 focus spells. Beyond that, I think it's just new standard spells. There's not focus spells for other characters.
We could barely fit those domains in there.
Yeah, so that That's good. Hey.
There was a big red question that I think I have an answer to. The pain is... okay. Spamatron. Regarding Zon Kutha and the Velstrax, they are partially inspired by Hellraiser, which is partially inspired by real-world body modification. Also, pain is a method as pursuing religious devotion, meditative focus, enlightenment to existed for centuries. Are there any deities, philosophies that explore this kind of themes without being super evil? I believe you want Vildeus.
Yeah, Vildeus, the goddess. She's an Imperial Lord. Vildeus is
the Cardinal Martyr.
The Cardinal Martyr. She's all about devotion and sacrifice and scars. I remember she has a cool blade called Cicatrice, which is pretty neat. But yeah, she's kind of the deity you would look at for doing that in a non-evil way, more like
she's neutral good or lawful good.
I think she's
or maybe chaotic
neutral good.
She's
good for sure.
she is covered with red scars, all of which represent a sacrifice that she made.
Vildeus is lawful good.
Lawful good.
Yes.
She has not changed alignment. She is a good Imperial Lord. And that's probably who you want to look to for the idea of pain behind purification. You might also look into Arshea, who represents freedom, and just for sexual desires, if you want to get into the SDM sort of culture behind that sort of thing. It's not specifically called out, but the entire point is to search for freedom and achieving those sorts of desires in a good, wholesome, just sort of like a freeing manner to be freed from the chains of societal taboo, I think, but without harming anybody, unless they really want it.
So, Lori 7x3 asked, can you show us one page? We literally can't do that. When we open the book, we have to show you 2 pages. So I guess what 2 pages do we want to show them?
You could if you break the spine.
That's true. I don't want to do that.
I could put the Cedar Man in front to block a page.
So, we're going to show you Pharasma. There she is in her cool chair with her cool depiction in the form of a hero card up here, actually. And yeah, that's the kind of stuff you can expect from the core entries there. Is there any info about where some gods came from? I think we talk a little bit about their creation.
Definitely if they come from specific backgrounds that we've mentioned before.
So I think we mentioned things like, there's Achikek and his sister grandmother spider were around the early days, things like that. But we don't go into full Windsong Testament style. If you want to go onto our blog, there's lots of cool fiction that James Jacobs wrote that talked about the creation myth and stuff. So that's probably a good spot to look at some of those for some of the core deities as well. Kay Blaney asks, any Arcadian gods? Yes, we have one, Kazuto.
Kazuto is right there.
Lets you transform into a form that lets you throw jaguars at people. So she's here. She's ready for your worship and for your use of machetes that are featured in this book.
King Trey III asks for any weird divine fonts. I believe that Damaritich, the Imperial Lord, is only harm.
Okay, and I think I remember, this was in the core, but I think Lamashtu grants you heal because of the whole birthing
I think
aspect.
there's a number of evil gods that will give you heal.
So, yeah, there's, again, look through the chart and you'll find plenty of cool stuff.
I think I saw somebody, it went off the screen, but somebody was asking if Lasala was in this book. I think she may have made it into the chart. Let's check.
Lasala here. I forget.
She would be under other.
Oh, yes, that's right. There's too many. Yes, Lasala's here. Yeah, great. If you're into the Fate domain and other cool stuff, Lasala might be the one you want. Razmir and cleric support. You gotta pay the price for that one. Right?
Yeah, I think you should talk to Jason Bullman and maybe bring a little something for those rules.
Lori 7x3 asks, any Easter eggs in the book? I think there's fun little stuff in the art here and there. The depiction I mentioned earlier about Saren Ray being kind of more Arcadian in theme is actually a callback to my adventure that took place in Arcadia, Born by the Sun's Grace, that mentions this depiction, and now here it is in art. So little stuff like that shows up here and there. River Ray asks, can we expect books like this one and the character guide to become a potential recurring series within the Lost Omen lines like the bestiary is for the core line? We can if you buy the book.
Buy our book.
If you buy the book and ask us.
Abdar makes the world go round.
For more of that, then yeah, you can. I can definitely see us trying to get back to the books like this. It just depends on fan response, I think. Miss Roy asks, did the Thessalonian deities get relegated to the appendix, or did one or two get a breakout? I don't think many of the Beyond Lasala made it into the chart. I mean, they've been pretty obscure for 10,000 years at this point. I don't think anyone's
I'm not sure anyone worships them. I'm not sure I know who they are.
I mean, Lasala was one of them. I think like the peacock spirit was.
That guy's a loser.
I mean, there were things like the ancient Aslanti deities, which I don't think...
There is one in the chart, actually.
There is?
In fact, she gets mentioned in one of the core deities entries.
Oh, that's right. I remember.
That's right.
Because of a nice wedding that happened sometime.
Shh. Buy our book.
Are there any gods who accept followers more than 2 alignment steps away?
Yep.
Yes, there are.
I think the weirdest may be Erasni.
Erasni is probably the weirdest one. What is Erasni?
Erasni accepts not neutral good, but chaotic good.
Yeah. Erasni, being neutral evil, accepts lawful neutral and neutral evil, and chaotic good and chaotic neutral. That's quite the smattering of alignments allowed there. So, yeah, that's pretty interesting.
So I'm going to say this right now because I know a lot of people are going to ask this later on. Why so and such doesn't accept X alignment? In many cases, it's because of the champion causes that alignment is tied to. Mm-hmm. So, for example, Erasni doesn't accept neutral good, which seems weird because she's neutral evil. So you'd think it would just go along the neutral plus, right? But the Redeemer is the neutral good champion. And, Erasni doesn't seem like the most forgiving deity. So she sponsors liberators instead. People who might free undead who are bound to their masters still.
Stuff like that. So when it makes, rather than just be restricted to, you have to be within 1 step of an alignment like we were in first edition, we wanted to use alignment to kind of support the themes of particular deities. That's why someone like Asmodeus literally only has lawful evil. No, you have to follow his rules. So stuff like that is a great way to express more flavor with very little footprint in terms of mechanics. It's just 2 extra letters here and there that will do that. Severin Laureate mentioned that magic tricks are awesome. They should be a thing in 2E. I agree. Maybe we'll get to those soon enough. But they're not in this book, unfortunately.
We may have gods and magic, but not that magic.
Pachydermic asks, how much of this book is magic and how much is God? I mean, in a way, all the gods do is pretty magical. If you're talking about mechanics, there's like 12 pages of magic, which is pretty good, plus magic items and all that stuff.
Plus like some support for other spells like Avatar.
Stuff like that. So there's magic all over. So that's great. Let's see. Prince Sethriel asks, are there alignment domains?
Nope.
No, we don't have those. Nothing like the evil domain or the law domain. Unfortunately, that's not something that's being represented right now with the rules. If you think that's something that should still show up, though, feel free to let us know, and we'll see if maybe there's a spot for that in the future. Speaking
as somebody who had to do all the domains for the chart, I feel like the alignment domains were a crutch for a lot of deities. We had the Orc Pantheon, which wound up getting cut at the last second. Cut at the last second, which was unfortunate. But a lot of these gods had the evil and chaos domains and not a whole lot more thought put into them. You couldn't look at these gods and think to yourself, well, I can see what this god is from their domains. There wasn't any fleshed out substance to them beyond, well, they're evil and chaotic. So, but I personally like having to, diversify our gods by removing those two domains.
It also gives us more options and expressing mechanically their themes. If we're always locked into, you have to have these two alignment domains or one alignment domain, that cuts us down from one less domain that we can use. So it's nice to have the extra options there.
It's true. We do have alternate domains, though. So potentially we could
we didn't even talk about that.
We potentially could do, these alignment domains as alternate domains.
So, yeah, that's definitely a thing we have. Let's see who might have good alternate domains. So, alternate domains, the way these work is you have your 4 core domains with a particular deity, but if you want, we have mechanical options that you buy into alternate domains that basically these are domains that still fit that deity's theme, but may not be something you always get by default. For example, Sarenrae has the repose domain, which makes sense for her, but just wasn't in the core rulebook. But if you want, you can buy into that. And when it makes sense, we say this deity has these particular alternate domains, and it will let you know how you can get to those. There's a few different ways. I think we have 2 or 3 different ways for that. Someone asked up above, I think, if there were any artifacts in this book. Unfortunately, the artifact rules weren't cemented in for the GMG just yet because this is coming out before then, but the GMG does have artifacts that are tied to some of the deities, so you can expect to see some of those in the Game Mastery Guide there. Real Chromasis asks, any deities with the spear or long spear as a favored weapon?
Yep.
Or any interesting favored weapons? Yeah, there's plenty of deities here. The long spear the spears are totally represented. There's
I believe Skio is got the long spear, or maybe it was just a normal spear.
Some of the Vidrani gods having one of the great outer gods and the great old ones.
Get a long spear, and if it turns out that's not the right kind of spear, just saw a foot off the haft.
Yeah, and any interesting favorite weapons? I mean, we talked about some of the new weapons here, like the machete or the polytool. We have stuff like the fighting fan and the bladed scarf that are coming back.
I think the most interesting is probably the Mambele, because if you Google that word, Mambele, and see what those look like, they're crazy. They're trippy. They're amazing to look at.
How much of the book is feature proofing for upcoming APs? I think it was more proofing for the setting as a whole. There's lots of deities we need to bring back, so trying to cover as much as we needed here.
I mean, it's proofing for future APs in that these are going to come up a lot in all sorts of circumstances for many, many reasons. So we can't avoid future-proofing with this book.
I'm going to try to cram in these last few questions. Might get an idea where we're headed for after Absalom from the book. No, we're not ready to talk about that just yet.
Well, I mean, the book after Absalom's been announced.
Oh, the book after Absalom. Yes, for Lost Omen. I thought you were talking about APs. It's Lost Omen Legends. Get to learn about all the different important figures in the setting. Is there any deity with the Jaguar as a favorite weapon? No, but there should be.
I think it's by default Kazuto, but only if you cast Avatar.
And finally, since the outer gods don't have anathemas, is there some other downside to worshiping them?
You're worshiping a nihilist.
Yeah, you're furthering their will.
I don't know. Is there a downside for worshiping the Jaguars eat my face party? I didn't think the Jaguars would eat my face.
So if you like getting rid of existence, that's I guess a plus.
I mean, your god will eat you on a whim because they don't give a crap about you, but sure.
All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have questions for. It's time to wrap up and say goodbye for the day. But we
have a topic for next Friday's stream?
Yes, we're going to be talking about the Extinction Curse Adventure Path. So anyone who's interested in gods and magic, feel free to check out the book. It's coming out at the end of this month on January 29th. We really hope people are looking forward to that, and we'd love to hear what everyone's thoughts are on that once they get their hands on the book. But I guess for now, that's all we have. Do we have a show going on tonight after the stream?
Dragons and Things is on hold until season 3.
Dragons and Things is on hold until season 3.
So just
Next week they'll have a Q&A.
Next week Q&A. So look forward to that.
So instead of watching Dragons and Things, just click away and then click back and click on the video and watch us again.
Watch it again.
Watch it again and buy our book.
You can put more questions in chat. I don't think we'll answer those though. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in. Happy New Year.
Bye.